I really like this philodendron. I think I really like the shape of how its leaves grow. But he's a very rewarding plant. Oh, he's so adorable. Hey everyone, it's Jess. In a new setup today. It's about 3 o'clock at the moment, and I was sitting in my usual spot, but the sun was really getting in my face, so I thought I'd just try up a different area. It's closer to the pond actually, so hopefully the trickling noise isn't too loud. Today guys, I thought I would show my Philodendron Burle Marx, which is this amazing specimen right here. This guy's got beautiful glossy leaves, and I really love how petioles point down, so it makes the entire leaf sort of point down, and it kind of grows up in a almost a shingling fashion, because the leaves are really just pointing or facing one direction, and that is normally in the direction of where there's light. I purchased this as a cutting for about 4 months now, and I would say it's definitely grown 50% in size, so it's definitely grown a lot, and over summer I think that's when it really grew. The Philodendron Burle Marx also comes in a variegated form, and that is a very sought after plant. It's a very rare plant, particularly in the Australian plant market at the moment. I think the last time I checked, a variegated Burle Marx was around $800. The version I have is the unvariegated one. It's a lot more accessible and readily available, although having said that, I haven't seen it available in commercial nurseries just yet. Today I thought I would do a care video, because yesterday I featured an easy to care anthurium, but today I thought I'd do an easy to care philodendron that's a little bit more unusual. So this philodendron is native to the rainforests of Brazil, and in fact its name, the Philodendron Burle Marx, was named after a prominent Brazilian landscape architecture called Roberto Burle Marx, whose work featured a lot of native plants in his landscaping. It is an epiphyte, so what that means is, like most aroids and hoyas, it grows by attaching itself to other plants. It can be a little bit parasitic, which is a word I came across in doing my research, although I don't really like to see plants as being parasites, but this is, I guess, coupled with the fact that it is a very fast grower, I can imagine it can take over another plant quite quickly. In the wild, it can get up to heights of about 3 meters tall, so that's about 10 feet, and the leaves can get up to about 60 centimeters long, so that's about 2 feet long. This is probably around 20 centimeters long, so if you can imagine 60 centimeters, it is quite a big plant. So as a house plant, it is an extremely resilient philodendron. It's one of the easiest philodendrons I own, and quite frankly, I probably don't pay him enough attention, but that's just a testament of how resilient this plant is. In terms of lighting for this plant, I guess I'll just start with some ideal lighting. This guy needs about 3 hours of some bright indirect light. If you aren't able to give that in your living situation, particularly if you're keeping him as an indoor plant, I'd consider getting a grow light, but I keep this guy outdoors under the veranda. He does get about 3 to 4 hours of bright morning light. Having said that, this guy can tolerate more shade, so if you do have a shadier location, this plant can tolerate it. And on the flip side, if you have a more sunnier or brighter lit condition, this plant can also tolerate that as well. But the one thing to keep in mind is you don't want to keep this plant in some bright direct sunlight, because that will burn this plant. In terms of temperature for this plant, ideal temperatures are between 18 to 26 degrees, so again that warmer tropical environment. Although this plant can tolerate some cooler temperatures, I'm probably going to say what I normally say, and that is I keep my plant outdoors, including during overwinter, which gets to lows of about 6 degrees, but I find that he hasn't complained. I would say that the lower temperatures mean you're not going to get as much growth, so if you are planning to keep him as a houseplant and do want to see some growth over winter, I'll just make sure that he is getting between 18 degrees to 26, just to keep up that warmer environment. In terms of humidity for this plant, as a rainforest dweller, it would like some moderate humidity, so anywhere from 70 to 80% humidity is great. However, another reason why it's a very easy plant to take care of is because if you don't have a humidifier, and in fact I don't use a humidifier, this plant can still do quite well. The only thing is, over summer when it gets quite dry, just make sure to, when you're watering, you can get some water on his leaves, or you can use a mister to spritz his leaves during summer, because you don't want this plant to dry out. Having said that, this guy can also tolerate a bit more dryness compared to some other philodendrons, and the ones I have in mind are such as the gloriosum, the silver cloud, or the philodendron micans. This philodendron is a lot easier to take care of compared to those other philodendrons. In terms of watering for this philodendron, I deep water my plant. So what that means is I really saturate the pot until I see the water drain out from the bottom. During summer, this guy I find gets super thirsty, and to help with his growth, I made sure to stick on top of his watering. So I water him probably once every 3 days or so, just really making sure his soil doesn't dry out. In winter, however, I do let the soil dry out before I water again, and that's probably a function of me keeping this plant outdoors. If you are keeping him indoors, I'd just be mindful, because water takes a little bit longer to dry out from indoor plants. Just want to double check or use your moisture meter to make sure that the soil is dry before you water it again. In terms of soil for this plant, like most of my aroids, needs a nice well-draining mix, which is a mix of orchid bark, perlite. I put a bit of charcoal in there and also some potting mix. This guy, I do give him a little bit more orchid bark compared to some of my other aroids, just because as an epiphyte, his tendency is to grow by attaching onto other plants. So the more you can replicate that environment, the better. So his aerial roots are more inclined to get a little bit more oxygen to them, which is why you want to make sure you do have a well-draining soil mix. With repotting for this plant, philodendrons don't like to be as root bound compared to other plants like alocasias. So summer, when he gets a bit bigger and I can see he's getting a lot, he'll get some more roots coming out from the soil, that's probably a sign for me to repot my plant, and to repot him in a pot that's going to give him about 6 centimeters from the edge of the pot, so a little bit bigger, just so his roots have a chance to spread. In terms of enabling growth and maintenance for this plant, as your plant gets bigger, and I would say probably when I see a lot more aerial roots come out and during the next spring or summer, I'm going to give this plant a totem pole for it to lean against, or a sphagnum moss pole, so it can wrap around its aerial roots. That is a sure way to help your plant grow and reach some incredibly big sizes. In terms of pruning though, I've heard that if you want to keep your plant more bushier and more compact, you want to prune its leaves. I personally prefer my plants to just do as they wish, so I don't really prune them. I'm actually hoping this plant gets quite unruly. The bigger and better, I say. If you do want to maintain a shrub-like or compact form, then pruning your plant is a way to do that. How you'd prune it is where it gets quite leggy, so where it's growing quite tall, I would just cut back on the leaves just so the leaves can grow a lot closer together. Another way to ensure that your plant grows as much as possible is when he does get thirsty, so keep on top of your watering, particularly during spring and summer, and also fertilize this plant. So this is a plant that I am going to fertilize in the winter, but I'm fertilizing once every other month. In summer, I'd fertilize this plant once every week, and I would use a diluted liquid fertilizer, and I pop that into the soil after I've watered the plant. In terms of propagation for this plant can be propagated through stem cuttings, and with stem cuttings, the best way to ensure it does develop roots is to cut right at the aerial root, and it can grow through water propagation or soil propagation. The ideal time to propagate is during spring or summer. In terms of pests for this plant, I couldn't actually come across a lot of mentions when it came to pests, but I'd say similar to a lot of philodendrons, mealy bugs are the thing to keep in mind. Now, mealybugs tend to attack plants that are suffering. So if your plant is losing a little leaves, if you haven't been giving him the best care, that's probably going to attract mealybugs. So I would say, unless you're not giving him the best lighting, or you're not keeping on top of his watering, that's a sure way to harm the plant, and that's probably a way that it will attract mealybugs, and then that's just going to give you a lot more trouble. If you do keep up his watering, give him enough light, he should be relatively pest free, and of course make sure your soil is quite well aerated so root rot doesn't occur. But aside from that, guys, this should be a relatively pest free plant, but also on top of that, he is more resilient than other philodendrons, so it's another reason why I would highly recommend having this philodendron as a houseplant. So guys, I hope you enjoyed some of these tips. I hope these tips were helpful. If you do have any questions on care, and my dad's coming with the hose again, please let me know by dropping a comment below or sending me a DM on Jessie Pot Plants. This is a very resilient grower. You can do minimal effort but still keep him quite happy. So it is a very rewarding plant, and I would say it's a great plant for beginners because he kind of does his own thing and he grows quite quickly, which is a plus. I hope you find yourself a Philodendron Burle Marx because they're incredibly great house plants. Otherwise guys, we will see you tomorrow.